Hello, I'm Graham Priest, and I'm a philosopher. I was born in the UK and educated there, but I spent most of my working life in Australia. And at the present, I work in the United States at the City University of New York. I work at the city's Graduate Centre. By training, I'm a mathematician, so a lot of my work has been at the point where mathematics and philosophy interface, and that's logic. So one thing I'm known for is my work in logic, and a lot of my work has been in the area called non-classical logic, that is, logics that have been developed in the last 50 or so years, which have certain unorthodox, at least by contemporary standards, features. But my work has always engaged with much more than just logic. So it's always been applied to and informed by issues in metaphysics, issues in the history of philosophy, both East and West. So many of my books draw together the techniques of formal logic and apply them to issues in metaphysics and the history of philosophy. So I wrote an introductory textbook called Introduction to Non-Classical Logic, but the more interesting books are books like In Contradiction, Towards Non-Being, One, which deal with issues in metaphysics and the history of philosophy. I think one thing that's always been important to me in my work is clarity and precision. I think this is very important. I don't have anything to do with obfuscation and pretense. But something else is important to me in philosophy as well, and that's realizing that in philosophy there are many different traditions, and there is something important to be learned from all of them. So some people in Western philosophy think that there's an important division between so-called analytic philosophy and so-called continental philosophy. I don't subscribe to this view at all. I think there are great philosophers in both traditions, and of course bad philosophers in both traditions. Also, speaking of traditions, there's the whole tradition of Asian philosophy, or traditions. There are several. A number of Western philosophers have even thought that these were not philosophy at all. I think this is just crazy. So I think there are many great Asian philosophers, and there is much to be learnt from their work. So I think what philosophers do is, of course, study important problems, but they learn from the history of philosophy and draw on the insights and the failings of the great philosophers. So I guess I see my work as very much synthetic in this way. I try to draw on the sites of all the great traditions, the great philosophers, whether Plato, Kant, Russell, Dogen, Nagarjuna. So I think maybe that's one of the things which makes my work distinctive as a contemporary philosopher, the fact that it does draw on these different traditions.